The Arizona sun burned bright against a flawless blue sky, the kind of day that made everything below shimmer with golden light. The air was still, clear, and filled with promise. For 11-year-old Emily Carter, this was the day she had waited for since she could remember. A day she would finally take to the skies in a real jet beside her hero, her uncle Tom Reynolds. Tom wasn't just any pilot. He was a retired Air Force officer, decorated and respected, now flying demonstration aircraft for a private aviation company. To Emily, he wasn't simply her uncle. He was larger than life, a man who could touch the clouds and laugh while doing it. Every time he visited, he brought stories of flying over deserts, oceans, and storm clouds, describing the world from a perspective that always left her wide-eyed and dreaming. That morning, Emily woke up before sunrise. She barely ate her breakfast, too excited to keep still. Her mother had braided her hair into 2 neat plaits and reminded her again and again, "Listen to your uncle. Don't touch anything unless he says so." Emily nodded, clutching the small camera she planned to use to record every second. When they arrived at the Phoenix airfield, the smell of jet fuel and the rumble of engines thrilled her. The hangars gleamed in the sunlight, and mechanics moved like dancers around the parked aircraft. Her eyes widened when she saw it, the sleek silver and blue Falcon 92 jet, polished to a mirror shine. It wasn't a huge commercial plane, but to Emily, it looked like something from a superhero movie. "Wow," she whispered. Tom chuckled. "She's beautiful, huh?" "She's perfect," Emily said, walking around the aircraft in awe. "She's got a name, too," Tom said with a wink. "Sky Dancer. Want to see how she flies?" Emily could hardly nod fast enough. Inside the cockpit, everything felt alive: switches, screens, levers, and blinking lights. The leather seat swallowed her small frame, and the smell of oil and metal filled her nose. She placed the headset over her ears as Tom climbed into the pilot's seat. He smiled at her through the mirrored visor of his helmet. "Ready, co-pilot?" Emily grinned so wide it hurt. "Ready." The engine roared to life. The vibration of power coursed through her chest as Tom spoke into the radio. "Phoenix Tower, this is Falcon 9-2 requesting clearance for takeoff." "Falcon 9-2, you are cleared." "Have a good flight, Tom," came the reply. The plane rolled forward. Emily's heart pounded as the runway blurred beneath them. The jet gathered speed faster, faster until suddenly the ground fell away. She gasped. The desert shrank into a mosaic of orange and tan beneath them, and the sky opened wide like a curtain revealing infinity. They were flying. Tom guided the jet smoothly upward, then leveled off at a few thousand feet. The sunlight spilled through the windshield, painting their faces gold. Emily couldn't stop smiling. "I can't believe we're actually in the air," she shouted over the headset. "Believe it," Tom laughed. "You're part of the crew now." He pointed to the instruments, explaining what each gauge meant. "That's the altimeter. It tells us our height. This here's the horizon indicator. See the line in the middle? It shows if we're level or turning. Always trust it, no matter what your eyes say." Emily nodded, fascinated. "And that one?" she asked, pointing at a dial. "Fuel pressure," Tom said. "You'd be surprised how much a jet drinks." She giggled. "Like me with chocolate milk." He chuckled. "Exactly." As they soared above the desert, Tom did gentle turns, letting her feel how the world tilted below. Emily pressed her face to the window. She saw mountains like sleeping giants, dry rivers twisting like faded scars, and towns that looked like toy villages. The sky felt endless, and for the first time in her life, she understood why her uncle could never stop flying. After a while, Tom flipped a switch and said, "Your turn, co-pilot?" Emily's eyes widened. "Really?" "Really. Just the basics." Keep your hands on the control stick with me." She nodded, heart racing. He placed her hands over his, guiding the yoke together. "Now, gently pull back a little. There you go. Feel that?" The nose lifted slightly, and the horizon dropped. The plane climbed smoothly. Emily gasped in awe. "You're flying her," Tom said proudly. "You're actually flying Sky Dancer." She laughed out loud, thrilled beyond words. "I'm doing it. I'm really doing it. Keep your eyes forward," he reminded her. "Nice and steady. Don't overcorrect." "Got it," she said, biting her lip in concentration. For several glorious minutes, Emily felt weightless free. She imagined herself older, maybe a pilot one day, flying all over the world like Uncle Tom. Then Tom said, "Okay, my turn again," and gently took back control. "How about a little spin to make things interesting?" Emily nodded eagerly. "Yes." The jet rolled into a shallow bank, dipping to the left. The horizon tilted beautifully. Emily squealed with excitement as the gee forces pressed her into her seat. Tom laughed. "You've got the spirit, kiddo." Everything about that moment was perfect. The hum of the engine, the brightness of the sky, the way the sunlight reflected off the wings. Emily never wanted to land. But then something changed. It was small at first, a hitch in Tom's laugh. He coughed once, then again, harder this time. His hand slipped slightly on the control stick. Emily frowned, confused. "Uncle Tom?" she asked. No answer. He coughed again, violently this time, one hand clutching his chest. The other hand fell away from the throttle. The plane tilted slightly to the right. Emily's smile vanished. "Uncle Tom?" she said louder. "Are you okay?" He didn't respond. His breathing became shallow, ragged. He tried to speak, but only a choked sound came out. Then, as if something invisible had struck him, his body slumped forward, head hitting the instrument panel with a dull thud. "Uncle Tom!" Emily screamed. The plane dipped sharply. The horizon spun as the left wing dropped. The steady hum of flight turned into a chaotic roar. Emily grabbed his shoulder, shaking him frantically. "Wake up! Please wake up!" Nothing. The jet was falling. Panic exploded through her chest. The world tilted, and alarms began to blare loud, shrill, terrifying. The control panel flashed red. Her heart hammered in her ears as she tried to remember everything he'd said. Horizon gauge? Keep level? Trust the instruments. She reached for the control stick, her small hands trembling. "Okay, okay," she whispered to herself. "Pull back. Not too much. Level it." The jet jerked violently, but began to steady. The horizon line straightened slightly. She gasped, her breathing rapid and shallow. Come on, come on. The world outside was a blur of light and motion. Every second stretched into forever. She looked at her uncle again, still motionless. Tears stung her eyes. "Please don't leave me," she sobbed. For the first time, she realized she was completely alone, 11 years old, thousands of feet above the ground, flying a machine she barely understood. Somewhere deep inside her, a small voice whispered, "You can do this. Just like he taught you." Emily took a deep breath, wiped her tears with the back of her sleeve, and focused on the controls. Her uncle's training echoed in her head, clear and calm. If anything goes wrong, stay calm. Airplanes need calm pilots. Her hands steadied. The jet leveled slightly. The alarms were still screaming, but the spin had stopped. The desert below no longer rushed upward. It was distant again, though still frighteningly close. She pressed the radio button on the console, praying for a miracle. "Hello? Can anyone hear me? This is Emily Carter." The pilot is down. Please, someone help. Only static answered. The reality of her situation began to sink in. She was 11 meters in a plane that could crash at any second. Her pulse pounded so hard, she thought she'd pass out. And yet, through the fear, one thought anchored her. Uncle Tom wouldn't give up. So neither will I. She took another shaky breath and looked out at the endless desert stretching beneath her, sunlight glinting off the wing. Somewhere, far below, her mother was probably waiting, expecting them home soon. Emily didn't know how she'd survive. She didn't know what buttons to press or how long the plane would stay in the air. But she knew one thing: she wasn't going to stop fighting. Because this flight, the flight that began as a dream, had just become a battle for their lives. The cockpit was suddenly transformed from a place of wonder into a chamber of terror. Emily's heart pounded so violently she could hear it echoing in her ears. Her small hands clutched the control stick, sweat making her grip slippery, as she shook her Uncle Tom's shoulder frantically. "Uncle Tom, wake up," she screamed, her voice cracking. The words bounced back off the cockpit walls, mingling with the roar of the engines. Her uncle didn't move. His helmet visor reflected only the endless blue of the sky and the blinking red warning lights on the control panel. Emily's mind raced. She remembered all the flight simulations they had practiced, all the times Tom had joked, "Flying is as much about your head as your hands." But this wasn't a simulation. This was real. And real meant the unthinkable. She was alone, thousands of feet in the air, in a jet capable of spiraling out of control at a heartbeat. Her vision blurred with tears. The jet jerked violently as it began to bank sharply to the right. The desert below seemed to rise and twist. Emily gripped the stick tighter, trying to push it forward, then back, trying to remember what her uncle had shown her. She felt a wave of nausea and panic, but she refused to let it control her. Think, she whispered. Her hands fumbled over switches, over levers, over buttons she barely recognized. Altimeter, horizon, throttle. Stabilize. She tried to steady the aircraft, but it shuddered violently with every movement. The nose dipped, then jolted upward, as if the jet had its own mind, threatening to hurl her into the desert below. Emily's thoughts raced faster than the jet. What if he doesn't wake up? What if I can't do this? She could feel her lungs tightening, her heartbeat thundering like a drum. Then, in a flash of clarity, she remembered what her uncle had said in the simulator. In any emergency, the first step is to stay calm. The plane will respond if you don't panic. She inhaled deeply, forcing herself to breathe, her small chest rising and falling as she tried to focus. Slowly, deliberately, she adjusted the yoke, nudging the plane gently to counter the tilt. The jet responded, albeit shakily. Emily exhaled a shaky sigh, her knuckles white. Suddenly, the engine shrieked, a high-pitched warning that sent her heart into overdrive. Smoke curled faintly from the left side, and a red light flashed on the control panel. Emily's eyes widened. Flames? She forced herself to look at the gauges, her uncle's voice echoing in her mind. Always trust your instruments. She knew she needed help desperately. With trembling fingers, she reached for the radio. "Mayday! Mayday!" she screamed, pressing the button again and again. "The pilot's down. I'm flying alone." "Please," static answered her, harsh and merciless, but then a crackle, then a voice. "This is Phoenix Tower." "Say again?" Emily's relief was immediate. "Hello. I'm Emily Carter. The pilot is unconscious. I don't know what to do. Please help me." The radio went silent for a tense moment before a calm, measured female voice came through. "Emily, this is air traffic control. My name is Sarah Davis. Listen to me. Take a deep breath. You're going to be okay. Can you tell me your altitude?" Emily swallowed hard, her throat dry. About 3,000 feet? Good. Keep it steady. Look at your horizon gauge. Keep the wings level. Do you see the runway ahead? Emily glanced out the window and saw a ribbon of asphalt far below, barely visible. Yes, she whispered. Her hands shook violently, but she felt a flicker of hope. Someone was talking her through this. She wasn't completely alone. The jet groaned, tilting slightly, and she had to act fast. Okay, wings level. Keep calm, she muttered to herself. She adjusted the stick with painstaking precision. The plane shuddered, threatening to tip again, but she kept it balanced, one slow, measured breath at a time. And the alarms intensified beep, 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 and smoke began curling into the cockpit, stinging her eyes. Emily coughed, gasping for air. Her hair was damp with sweat, sticking to her forehead. She could see the tip of the left wing flickering slightly, a tiny burst of orange against the sky. Flames. Terror clawed at her chest. I'm going to crash. I'm too small. I can't do this. But then another thought cut through her fear. Uncle Tom would never give up on me. I can't give up on him. With shaky hands, she reached for the throttle and slowly reduced the left engine's power. Following the instructions, Sarah barked over the radio. Yes, that's it, Emily. Keep it steady. You're doing it. Emily's lips quivered as she listened, following every direction. Her small hands moved across switches and levers like a pianist learning a complicated piece. But instead of music, she was playing survival. The jet responded slowly, the violent tilt easing, the roaring vibrations settling into a terrifying but manageable hum. Below her, the desert stretched endlessly, a mosaic of reds, browns, and golds. She could see the faint glint of rivers, dry and winding like silver threads. Dust kicked up from distant roads as cars slowed, people pointing to the sky at the struggling jet. Emily's stomach lurched, but she couldn't let herself look away. Not for a second. Minutes felt like hours as she fought to keep the jet steady. Her hands ached, her arms trembled, but she remembered every lesson her uncle had taught her. Eyes forward. Trust the instruments. Don't fight the plane guider. The radio buzzed again. Emily, do you see the nearest airstrip? You're going to need to make a landing soon. Emily's stomach flipped. Landing? That was terrifying. She had never even touched the brakes before. But she nodded to herself, even though no one could see her. Yes, I see it, she whispered, voice shaking. I'll try. Good. We'll guide you step by step. You're doing amazing. Emily swallowed another sob. She was 11, flying a jet alone for the first time in her life. Her uncle unconscious beside her, smoke curling into the cockpit. Yet, for the first time since the collapse, she felt a tiny spark of control. She adjusted the stick slightly to level the wings again, listening intently to Sarah's calm instructions. Her hands were still shaking, her heart still racing, but she didn't panic. She couldn't afford to. Time became a blur. The radio chatter, the alarms, the roar of the jet, the heat of the cockpit, the smell of smoke all merged into one intense, overwhelming reality. Emily's mind focused on one thing. Keep the plane in the air. Keep it steady. Don't give up. She imagined her mother, waiting at the airfield, unaware of the chaos above. She imagined her friends, amazed by her courage. She imagined her uncle, trusting her. And in that thought, she found strength she didn't know she had. The jet leveled. The smoke thinned slightly. The flames on the wing flickered, less threatening than before. Emily exhaled, her lips trembling. I'm doing it. I'm really doing it. But she knew this was just the beginning. The hardest part, landing, was still ahead. And somewhere in the distance, a runway awaited. A small strip of salvation in the endless desert. Guided by a calm voice, and the courage of an 11-year-old girl who refused to quit. Emily tightened her grip on the controls, eyes forward, mind razor-sharp. She wasn't just fighting the plane. She was fighting fear itself. And somehow, she knew, deep in her heart, that the collapse of her perfect flight had sparked the birth of a hero. The cockpit was filled with smoke, thick and acrid, stinging Emily's eyes and filling her lungs with every breath. Her small hands trembled on the control stick as the warning lights continued to flash red, insistent and terrifying. The alarm screamed, a chaotic symphony of danger that demanded immediate attention. She wiped tears from her cheeks and tried to force her panic aside. Her Uncle Tom was still slumped over, silent and unmoving. Emily's mind reeled as she took in the full reality. She was alone, flying a jet, smoke curling around her, and one engine now showing clear signs of malfunction. She had never faced anything like this before. Not in simulations, not in her training. Never. And yet, the plane demanded her focus. It had to respond to her guidance, her courage. Okay. Think, Emily whispered to herself, trying to mimic the calm, steady voice of her uncle. She remembered his words. If anything goes wrong, follow your instruments and trust the plane. Don't fight it, guide it. Her fingers hovered over the various switches and levers, unsure which to pull first. Then she noticed the left engine gauge spiking into the red. Flames! A small flicker had become a larger blaze along the engine cowling. Emily's eyes widened. Smoke was pouring into the cockpit more heavily now, and the smell of burning metal made her gag. She coughed violently, spluttering as she tried to focus. Her vision blurred through tears and haze, but she forced herself to look at the instruments in front of her. Left engine overheating. Shut it down. Stabilize. Her uncle's training lessons came back, like a lifeline thrown across a stormy sea. She found the red lever labeled Engine Cutoff, hesitated for a moment, then gripped it tightly and pulled. The lever moved with a reassuring click, and the red gauge slowly started to decline. Yes, yes. Okay, she whispered to herself. But the relief was fleeting. The jet shuddered violently in response, as though complaining at being restrained. She gritted her teeth, gripping the control stick with both hands. Every movement had to be careful, deliberate. The plane could sense panic. Emily, listen to me, came Sarah Davis's calm voice over the headset. You're doing great. Keep the wings level. Don't overcorrect. Can you see the airstrip ahead? Emily squinted through the smoky windshield. Through the haze, she could just make out a faint ribbon of tarmac, the only thing separating her from certain disaster. Yes, yes, I can see it, she managed to say. Her voice was trembling, but she forced it steady. Good. You're going to get us down, Sarah continued. Now, focus on stabilizing the plane. Slow, gentle movements. You can do this. Emily nodded, though Sarah couldn't see her. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the fear rising like a tidal wave inside her. The plane was heavy, the jet engine screaming and the smoke thickening, but she had no choice. She had to keep flying. She had to survive. The left engine continued to sputter slightly, and Emily could feel the heat radiating into the cockpit. The control stick vibrated under her hands. She remembered her uncle's warnings about how a jet's weight distribution changed when one engine failed. Slowly, painstakingly, she nudged the controls to compensate, countering the tilt, keeping the wings level. The jet groaned, obeying her tiny, trembling hands. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly. Tiny towns looked like miniature sets, roads like silver threads, and distant mountains loomed, indifferent to the drama unfolding above. Emily's stomach churned at the height, the speed, the realization of her isolation. Every second was a test, every breath a struggle. She couldn't afford mistakes. One wrong move, one panic-driven twitch, could send the plane spiraling toward the earth. Smoke began to creep around her visor, tickling her face. She coughed again, hacking violently. Her voice was hoarse from shouting over the radio, but she pressed on. "Sarah? I can see the runway, but the left engine fire is getting worse. Okay, Emily, you did the right thing. Keep it steady. We're going to guide you through this. Follow my instructions exactly. You can handle this." Emily swallowed, her throat dry. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely manipulate the controls. But she obeyed. She followed Sarah's calm, measured directions, step by step. Push the yoke slightly forward. Yes, hold. Good. Now gently adjust the rudder. The jet responded. Slowly, imperceptibly at first, then more steadily. Emily realized she was starting to regain some control. Her panic, while still present, was no longer paralyzing her. She could manage this. She could manage this. The flames on the left engine continued to lick outward, but the smoke began to thin slightly as the engine shut down. Emily's chest rose and fell rapidly. She dared to glance at her uncle again. He was still unconscious, pale under his helmet, but breathing. At least he was alive. And that gave her the courage to keep going. "Emily, we're going to start descending toward the runway now. Are you ready?" Sarah's voice was calm, but firm. Emily nodded, even though the voice couldn't see her. "Yes, I'm ready." The descent was terrifying. The jet shuddered as she carefully nudged it downward, keeping it steady despite the lingering flames. Dust rose from the desert floor, visible from this height, making the landing strip appear even smaller. Every adjustment required extreme concentration. Emily's hands felt numb, her arms aching from the constant strain. But she focused. Eyes forward. Wings level. Instruments first. She could hear her own heartbeat, loud in her ears, and the alarm sirens of the jet competing with the radio voice guiding her. Time slowed, each second stretching endlessly. The plane dipped, then rose slightly, then leveled again, following her every tiny movement. Emily realized something incredible. She was flying. Not just surviving, not just controlling chaos. She was flying, truly, in the most desperate situation of her life. Below her, emergency teams were mobilizing. Vehicles sped across desert roads, lights flashing. A plume of dust rose where they converged. Emily caught glimpses through the smoke-stained cockpit glass. She realized people were already witnessing this. An 11-year-old girl, alone in a flaming jet, fighting to survive. Tears blurred her vision again, but she ignored them. Fear was still there, but it no longer ruled her. She followed Sarah's directions precisely, shutting off unnecessary systems, checking her instruments, adjusting flaps, keeping the nose slightly upward to prevent a stall. Minutes felt like hours, but slowly, Emily began to stabilize the jet. The flames remained, but the smoke thinned enough to see outside. The horizon was level, the runway ribbon approaching. She could do this. The reality of what she was doing, the magnitude of it hit her. She was 11, alone, flying a jet with one engine on fire. And she had not given up. Not yet. The cockpit was still hot, smoky, and overwhelming, but Emily felt a growing sense of control. One step at a time, one careful adjustment, one breath at a time. The plane obeyed her. The jet was alive, but she was alive too. And together, they might just make it. The fire warning was still flashing, the left engine still damaged, but Emily's confidence had begun to grow. She was no longer just reacting to chaos. She was guiding it, controlling it. And for the first time since the collapse, she believed she might survive this nightmare. "Good job, Emily," Sarah said over the headset. "You're doing amazing. Keep it steady. The runway's getting closer." "Almost there?" Emily swallowed, nodding even though Sarah couldn't see her. Her hands tightened on the controls. She glanced at her uncle one last time alive, breathing, trusting her. And in that moment, Emily Carter realized something extraordinary. She wasn't just fighting for her life. She was becoming a pilot. The cockpit of the Falcon 92 was thick with smoke, the acrid smell filling Emily's nostrils as her small hands clutched the yoke. Her chest heaved from a combination of fear, exertion, and adrenaline. She kept glancing at her unconscious Uncle Tom slumped in the pilot's seat beside her, wishing desperately he could just wake up and take control. But he didn't. She was alone. She was in command. And the plane of fiery, roaring beast responded only to her actions. A crackle came over the headset, a voice slicing through the chaos. "Emily? This is Phoenix Tower. Can you hear me?" Emily's heart leapt. "Yes, yes. I can hear you," she shouted, her voice trembling. "The pilot, my uncle, is down. I don't know what to do." "Okay, Emily. Take a deep breath. My name is Sarah Davis. You're doing great so far. Now, listen carefully, step by step. You're not alone." For the first time in the last 10 minutes, Emily felt a flicker of hope. A real person was guiding her. Not a simulation, not a lecture, but a real voice in the middle of chaos. Sarah's calm tone was like an anchor in the storm, steadying her trembling hands. "Emily, tell me your altitude," Sarah asked. Emily checked the altimeter, her fingers trembling as she read the gauge. 3,000. 3,000 feet, she whispered. "Good. Now, can you see the airstrip ahead?" Squinting through the smoke-stained windshield, Emily spotted it, an impossibly small ribbon of tarmac that looked like a thin thread stretched across the desert. "Yes, I can see it," she said. "Perfect. Now we're going to get you down, Emily. But you have to listen carefully. Don't rush. One step at a time." Emily nodded, though Sarah couldn't see her. "One step at a time," she repeated silently. The mantra seemed to steady her shaking hands. She had survived the initial collapse, managed the fire warning, and stabilized the plane. Now came the hardest part, controlled descent and landing. Sarah guided her through a series of instructions. First, check your instruments. Make sure the plane is level. Wings level? Emily adjusted the yoke slightly. The jet wavered, then steadied. "Level," she whispered. "Good. Now throttle down gently. Let's start descending slowly toward the runway. Small movements, Emily. Not sudden, not panicked." Emily's stomach flipped. She had never lowered a plane from the sky before. The thought of descent made her heart race faster than it ever raced in her life. But she obeyed, easing the throttle back just enough to begin the controlled descent. The plane responded, tilting ever so slightly downward. "Excellent," Sarah said calmly. "Now, keep your eyes on the horizon and the runway. Watch the instruments. Everything is going to be fine." Emily's vision flicked between the horizon, the approaching strip of tarmac, and her instruments. Every nerve in her body was alert. She could feel the vibrations from the jet's engines beneath her hands, the roar of wind through the fuselage, the subtle shifts in balance as she adjusted for one engine out and one flaming. She realized she was truly piloting the aircraft. Not a practice simulation. Not a game. She was flying. And lives her own and her uncle's depended on every small movement. Minutes stretched, agonizingly long. Smoke continued to curl into the cockpit, stinging her eyes, making her tear up. Her fingers trembled as she nudged the yoke to maintain a steady trajectory. Her legs, too short to reach some of the pedals comfortably, strained to maintain balance. Every command from Sarah became a lifeline. Emily, watch your speed, Sarah instructed. Too fast, and the landing could be dangerous. Too slow, and you risk a stall. Can you adjust? Emily's small hand found the throttle again, nudging it carefully. She felt the jet respond, rising slightly, then settling into the perfect descent path. She exhaled shakily. I'm controlling it. I'm controlling it, she whispered. The runway grew larger in her view, now unmistakably a narrow strip in the desert. Her heart jumped. Rescue crews, alerted by Phoenix Tower, had begun lining the tarmac with emergency vehicles. She could see the tiny figures moving below people, running toward the aircraft, their presence simultaneously comforting and terrifying. Every movement felt monumental. Emily, I need you to start preparing for landing, Sarah said. Landing gear down, flap set. Do you remember what I taught you? Emily nodded, though her hands were still shaking violently. She reached for the landing gear lever and pulled it down. The mechanical clunk echoed through the cockpit. She felt the plane dip slightly as the flaps extended, increasing drag and slowing descent. The jet shuddered under her hands. Her stomach twisted. It's okay. It's okay, she told herself. Good job, Sarah encouraged. Now, focus on keeping the wings level. You're almost there. Emily's eyes flicked to her instruments constantly, checking airspeed, altitude, and alignment with the runway. Every adjustment she made had to be precise. One wrong twitch could send the jet veering off course, and the runway, though large from above, was a tiny target for an 11-year-old girl flying a flaming jet. Smoke thickened once more, curling around her visor, making it harder to see outside. Emily coughed violently, gasping for air. Her hands were slick with sweat, and the fatigue in her arms was becoming unbearable. But she pushed through, recalling her uncle's voice from years of practice. The key is focus. Don't fight fear, use it. It sharpens your mind. Yes. I can do this, she whispered. I have to do this. The runway now filled more of her view. She could see the vehicles below, some of them moving to provide guidance, others stationary, waiting for the moment of landing. The emergency crew's presence gave her a strange sense of reassurance. She wasn't completely alone. She wasn't invisible. People were counting on her. Emily, check your altitude again, Sarah's calm voice instructed. Emily glanced at the altimeter. 1,200 feet. 1,200 feet, she said. Perfect. Keep it steady. Nose slightly up. Flaps extended. Focus. Emily adjusted the yoke delicately, the jet responding obediently. She could feel the vibrations, the subtle weight shift from the disabled engine, but she maintained control. She had never felt more alive and simultaneously terrified in her life. Minutes ticked by with excruciating slowness. Every second brought her closer to the ground, yet she didn't dare look away from the instruments. Every adjustment had to be perfect. Sarah continued her calm narration, guiding Emily through each step, breaking the landing into simple, manageable tasks. Emily followed each instruction, one after the other, her hands trembling but precise. Slowly, carefully, the runway grew beneath her. The desert stretched endlessly around it, but Emily's focus was unbreakable. She was flying a jet, alone, on fire. And she was alive. Finally, the runway seemed within reach. The emergency crews were clear, the runway aligned, and Emily's small hands had guided the jet from near disaster to a controlled descent path. Sweat dripped down her face, her arms ached, and her chest heaved with every breath, but she allowed herself a single thought: I'm going to make it. Sarah's voice came again, calm and steady. Emily, you're almost there. Just a little further. Keep the wings level. You can do this. Emily nodded, though the words barely left her lips. She tightened her grip on the yoke, adjusted the throttle for final descent, and prepared herself for the most difficult moment yet, touching the ground. In that moment, time seemed to slow. The cockpit was a haze of smoke. The plane vibrated under her hands, and her heart thundered. But she remembered every lesson, every warning, every word from her uncle. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet, determined voice whispered, "I can do this. I won't give up." The cockpit of the Falcon 92 was now a furnace. Smoke coiled through the cabin, thick and choking, curling around Emily's small frame and stinging her eyes. Her hands, trembling from exertion and fear, gripped the yoke as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. The left engine continued to hiss and pop, flames licking the cowling and sending sparks into the sky. The roar of the engines filled her ears, vibrating through her chest, each pulse a reminder of the danger she faced. Emily's heart hammered like a drum. Her chest felt tight, her breaths short and shallow, but she refused to succumb to panic. She remembered her uncle's voice from years of flight lessons. "Fear is your enemy, Emily. Focus is your friend." She clutched the controls tighter, forcing herself to concentrate on one thing at a time. "Emily, I need you to stay calm." Sarah's voice crackled through the headset. "You're doing amazing. You've stabilized the plane. Now, focus on containing the fire. Shut down unnecessary systems and maintain altitude." Emily nodded, even though Sarah couldn't see her. Her fingers found the switch to cut power to the left engine completely. She hesitated a fraction of a second. Could she do this? Would the plane respond? Then she pulled. A faint click echoed in the cockpit, followed by a series of groans as the jet adjusted to the sudden change in power. The plane shuddered violently. Emily felt her stomach drop and gritted her teeth, holding the yoke as steady as she could. She glanced at her uncle, still unconscious beside her, pale under the dim cockpit lights and streaked with sweat. Relief washed over her. He was breathing. He was alive. That gave her the courage to push forward. Smoke curled in her face, making it hard to see the horizon. Her eyes watered, blurring the landscape outside the cockpit. But Emily couldn't afford to look away. Every second counted. Every movement mattered. The runway was still far below, a thin line in the vast desert. The jet was heavy, unbalanced, and stubborn, but it was responsive. She just needed to guide it. "Emily, we need to start slowing down," Sarah's voice instructed. "Deploy flaps, maintain wings level, and begin aligning for the landing strip. Keep your movements small and precise. You've got this." Emily reached for the flaps lever, her hands slick with sweat. She hesitated, then pushed the lever forward, feeling the plane shudder as the flaps deployed. The nose lifted slightly, the descent rate slowed. She exhaled shakily, a small victory in the midst of chaos. The flames on the left engine intensified again, sparks flying against the metallic skin of the aircraft. Emily's stomach turned with fear, but she forced herself to focus on her instruments. Instruments first, stay calm. She nudged the yoke slightly to compensate for the shifting weight, maintaining level wings as Sarah instructed. Minutes stretched into eternity. The cockpit was a haze of smoke, the roar of the engines overwhelming, the smell of burning metal thick in the air. Emily's hands were numb from gripping the yoke, her arms aching from holding them steady. Her lungs burned, her chest heaved, but she refused to give up. This was a battle between fear and focus, chaos and control, and Emily was determined to win. "Emily, keep your eyes forward," Sarah continued. "Don't look at the fire. Focus on the horizon and the instruments. You're doing it." Emily's lips quivered. She blinked rapidly to clear her eyes, focusing on the faint line of the runway ahead. The plane shuddered again as a gust of wind caught it, but she held the yoke steady. "You've got this," You can do this, she whispered to herself. Suddenly, the engine shuddered and emitted a loud pop. Sparks flew past her visor. Emily flinched, but she didn't release the controls. Instead, she remembered her uncle's words about emergency landings. One problem at a time. Don't fight the plane. Guide it. Her small fingers flew over the switches, adjusting fuel flow, checking altimeters, and monitoring airspeed. The jet responded, slow and steady, stabilizing slightly. Emily felt a surge of confidence. I can do this. I am doing this. Below, emergency crews were already lining the runway. Fire trucks, ambulances, and police vehicles formed a corridor of safety. Emily could see their flashing lights, tiny but unmistakable, a beacon in the vast desert. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from hope. They were waiting for her. She had to reach them. Emily, we're going to guide you through the final approach, Sarah's voice said, calm and commanding. Keep your wings level, throttle steady, and start descending slowly. You're almost there. Emily nodded, her hands steadying as she followed each instruction. The jet groaned as she nudged the controls, adjusting for the disabled engine and the lingering fire. Her heart raced with every passing second. The runway was getting closer, a thin strip of salvation stretching across the desert floor. Smoke continued to curl into the cockpit, making her eyes sting, but Emily forced herself to focus. She ignored the flames licking the engine cowling, the vibration of the aircraft, the fear threatening to overwhelm her. She had one job: guide the jet safely to the ground. Her hands moved with increasing precision. Flaps adjusted, throttle steady, wings level. The runway grew larger, more defined, every detail etched into her mind. She could see the emergency crews moving, the fire trucks ready, their presence both comforting and terrifying. Every movement mattered, every breath counted. Minutes later, Emily found herself in the final approach. The runway stretched ahead, perfectly aligned. The jet responded to her commands, albeit shakily. The flames on the left engine still flickered, but she had stabilized the plane enough to focus on landing. Emily, you're doing amazing, Sarah said. Just a little further. Keep calm. You're almost there. Emily's throat was dry, her lips trembling, but she nodded. Her eyes were fixed on the runway, her hands steady. She had fought panic, smoke, and fire. She had taken control of a jet at 11 years old. And now, she was moments away from proving that courage and focus could conquer fear. The ground rushed closer. Dust rose from the desert floor, flickering in the sunlight. The runway loomed ahead, every line and marker clear. Emily felt her heart leap. This was it. The culmination of every terrifying moment. The final test of her resolve. Steady, 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 she whispered. Her fingers moved instinctively over the controls, guided by Sarah's calm voice and the echo of her uncle's lessons. The jet responded, dipping slightly, then leveling again. The runway was within reach. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the vibration of the jet beneath her. Sweat dripped down her face, her arms ached, and her lungs burned, but she didn't flinch. She couldn't. Not now. She had come too far. The flames continued to flicker, but Emily's focus never wavered. She was flying. She was alive. And she was about to land a jet in a way no 11-year-old had ever done before. The runway was waiting. And so was destiny. The runway stretched before her, a ribbon of salvation, cutting through the endless desert. Emily's eyes were fixed on it, every muscle in her small body tense, every thought focused. Her 11-year-old hands gripped the yoke as if it were her lifeline, the metal vibrating beneath her fingers like a heartbeat. The Falcon 92 jet groaned and shuddered with every movement, the left engine still flickering with flames, smoke curling into the cockpit, but she refused to falter. She had come too far. She would not let fear win. "Emily, this is it." Sarah Davis's voice came through the headset, calm but firm. "You're aligned. You've stabilized the plane. Now it's time to bring her down. Keep your wings level. Don't rush. Trust the plane." Emily nodded, even though Sarah couldn't see her. She swallowed hard, feeling the dry lump in her throat. The runway seemed impossibly narrow, the desert stretching endlessly around it. Dust swirled in her vision from the vehicles and emergency crews waiting below. Her pulse thundered, her stomach knotted with terror and anticipation, but she forced herself to breathe steadily. She nudged the throttle slightly, easing the jet into a slower descent. Every minor adjustment mattered. Too much, and the plane could stall. Too little, and she risked overshooting the runway. She felt the vibration from the left engine, still sputtering, but she focused only on her instruments, her hands moving with a combination of instinct and training. The runway grew larger, clearer, the tiny lines stretching out like a promise. Emily's mind raced through everything her uncle had taught her. Control your speed. Manage the descent. Stay calm. Trust your instincts. Every lesson, every simulation, every story of flying she had heard suddenly became real, guiding her small hands and focused mind. "Flaps full, Emily. Keep the nose up slightly," Sarah instructed. Emily followed the instructions carefully, pushing the flaps to their full extent. The jet shuddered as the drag increased, slowing their descent. Her heart raced, but she stayed calm. The runway markers were coming into sharper focus. She could see the emergency crews lining the tarmac, vehicles flashing their lights, ready to assist if anything went wrong. Her hands shook, but she refused to let them falter. She remembered the mantra her uncle had drilled into her. Eyes forward. Instruments first. Control, not panic. She adjusted the yoke, keeping the wings level, the nose just slightly above the horizon. The Falcon 92 responded, trembling but obedient. Emily's vision blurred as smoke filled the cockpit. She coughed violently, choking, but didn't release the controls. She felt her small body trembling from exhaustion, adrenaline, and fear. Yet in that chaos, she found clarity. She was flying, not just surviving, but actively guiding the jet to safety. The final moments approached. The runway was almost beneath her. Dust and heat waves rose from the tarmac, distorting her vision. The emergency crews were tiny moving figures now, flashing lights reflecting off the metal of the jet. Emily's heart pounded in her ears. "I can do this. I can do this. I can do this," she whispered, a mantra against the roar and smoke. "Prepare for touchdown," Sarah instructed. "Throttle steady. Keep her level. Slightly back on the yoke to cushion the landing. You're almost there." Emily nodded, though her hands were numb. She eased the throttle carefully, guiding the jet lower. The vibration of the engines intensified as the plane descended, the left engine sputtering and crackling, but no longer threatening immediate explosion. She focused solely on the yoke and her instruments, trusting them to guide her, trusting herself to respond. The landing strip grew larger beneath her. The nose of the jet tipped slightly upward, following Sarah's instructions. Emily felt the Falcon 92's wheels brush against the tarmac for the first time. A jolt ran through the plane, metal screeching, tires squealing. Her heart leapt. This was it. She had done the impossible. But the landing was far from over. The jet shuddered violently as it touched down fully, the full weight pressing down on the landing gear. Sparks flew briefly from the damaged left engine. Smoke billowed, and the vibration threatened to throw her off balance. Emily's hands clenched the yoke, her knuckles white, forcing the plane straight down the runway. "Brake gently, Emily. Steady. Don't overdo it," Sarah instructed. Emily applied the brakes carefully, watching the speed decrease. Dust and sand kicked up from the tarmac as the jet slowed, the runway stretching endlessly in front of her. Flames licked the left engine cowling, smoke spiraling upward, but the plane was responding. Slowly, excruciatingly, it was coming to a stop. Her small hands were trembling violently now, arms aching, but she didn't let go. She kept the nose straight, the wings level, and the jet's forward momentum controlled. Emergency crews were running alongside, ready to assist. The runway lights reflected off the shiny metal, creating a surreal, almost cinematic scene of chaos and bravery. Finally, the Falcon 92 came to a complete stop. Emily exhaled shakily, tears streaming down her cheeks. She had done it. Against every odds, she had landed a jet alone at 11 years old, with a flaming engine, smoke-filled cockpit, and an unconscious pilot beside her. She sat there, chest heaving, hands numb, barely able to comprehend what she had just achieved. The emergency crews approached cautiously, fire extinguishers in hand, eyes wide with disbelief. They helped guide her out of the cockpit, shielding her from the lingering smoke and sparks. Emily stumbled slightly, exhausted beyond measure, but she was alive. Her Uncle Tom, now being attended to by medical personnel, was breathing steadily, alive thanks to her courage and focus. People on the ground, reporters, emergency responders, and bystanders watched in awe. News of an 11-year-old girl landing a jet spread instantly. Emily, small and trembling, had become a symbol of bravery, quick thinking, and sheer determination. Sarah Davis's voice crackled through the radio one last time. "Emily, you did it. You brought her down safely. I knew you could." Emily exhaled, relief and exhaustion flooding her small body. She looked at her uncle, who was now sitting up with help, giving her a weak but proud smile. "I knew you could do it," he whispered hoarsely. Emily's lips trembled into a small, exhausted smile. The desert around them was calm again, the chaos subsiding. The jet sat on the runway, damaged but intact, a testament to Emily's courage. She had survived the impossible. She had flown, faced fire, smoke, and fear, and come through as a hero. For Emily, the world had changed in a matter of minutes. She was no longer just an 11-year-old girl. She was a pilot, a hero, and a survivor. And though she was exhausted, trembling, and covered in sweat and smoke, she felt something extraordinary, a sense of accomplishment, courage, and the knowledge that fear could be overcome. The impossible had been done. The jet was on the ground. Emily Carter had saved her uncle, herself, and made history in the process. The desert was quiet now, the roar of the Falcon 92 silenced, replaced by the crackle of lingering flames and the distant hum of emergency vehicles. Emily's legs shook as she stepped out of the cockpit, sweat and soot streaking her face, clothes disheveled from the harrowing ordeal. Around her, firefighters and paramedics worked swiftly, ensuring the jet was safe, extinguishing the remaining flames, and checking her Uncle Tom for injuries. Emily's heart still pounded, her chest heaving as reality began to sink in. She had landed a jet, alone, at 11 years old. Her uncle, groaning but conscious now, sat propped up on a stretcher, his eyes wide with disbelief and pride. "Emily, I can't believe you did it," he stammered. He tried to rise, but a paramedic gently stopped him. "You're okay, sir. Just rest." Emily nodded, her small hands gripping her knees as she leaned against the side of the jet, still trembling. The adrenaline that had carried her through the impossible was slowly fading, replaced by exhaustion and awe. She looked at the Falcon 92, once a terrifying machine, now a monument to her courage. The flames were gone, the smoke had dissipated, and yet it felt alive to her, still a beast, she had tamed the most extraordinary circumstances. "Miss Emily Carter," a voice called, and Emily turned to see a uniformed official approaching. "We need to make sure you're unharmed, but first, we need to document this miracle." Cameras flashed as reporters and journalists swarmed closer, capturing images of the girl who had just performed the impossible. Emily's cheeks flushed red with a mix of embarrassment and pride. She had never sought attention. She had only sought to survive, to save her uncle. "Emily, are you okay?" Sarah Davis's voice came over the radio. "You did it? You're safe. Everyone is safe." Emily's hands trembled as she clutched the radio. I think so," she whispered, voice barely audible. Her eyes were wide, taking in the chaos and attention. The emergency crews were working efficiently. The reporters were shouting questions, and her uncle was being examined by paramedics, giving her a shaky but proud thumbs up. News helicopters began to circle above, the low hum of rotors adding to the surreal atmosphere. On the ground, police and rescue teams secured the area, ensuring that the Falcon 92 remained stable and that no one got too close to the damaged jet. Emily's mind was spinning. She had survived. She had landed. And now the world seemed to be watching. "Emily, can you tell us what happened?" a reporter shouted. Emily hesitated, the words caught in her throat. She had experienced fear, unlike anything she had ever imagined, but now she was safe. Her voice shook, but she managed to speak. My uncle. He collapsed, and I had to fly the jet. Alone." The reporters murmured among themselves, incredulous. An 11-year-old girl flying a jet solo in an emergency. It sounded impossible. But the evidence, the jet, the emergency crews, the smoke-stained cockpit was undeniable. Emily had become a living legend. Paramedics approached, checking her for injuries, brushing soot from her hair and face. Emily's hands trembled as they guided her to a stretcher, just in case. But she waved them off, insisting she was fine. She wanted to be near her uncle, to make sure he was okay. He had trusted her life to her, and she had delivered. That trust mattered more than anything else. Word began to spread rapidly. Social media exploded with images of Emily climbing out of the cockpit, smoke-stained and triumphant. The hashtags began trending. Hashtag Flying Hero, hashtag Emily Carter, hashtag Miracle Landing. Messages poured in from across the country, from people inspired by her courage, amazed at her poise under pressure. Emily, once an ordinary 11-year-old, had become a symbol of bravery. Her uncle, now stabilized by paramedics, embraced her gently, his voice shaking. "You saved us, Emily. You saved me. I am so proud of you." Tears filled Emily's eyes, a mixture of relief, pride, and exhaustion. She had faced fear, mastered it, and emerged victorious. Meanwhile, the media attention only grew. News crews, helicopters, and reporters clamored for statements, eager to capture the story of the girl who had landed a jet solo. Emily answered quietly, modestly, emphasizing teamwork and guidance from air traffic control. "I couldn't have done it without Sarah on the radio. She helped me the entire way. And my uncle. He taught me everything I know." Despite the attention, Emily remained humble. She understood that her actions were extraordinary, but she also knew that panic, hesitation, or fear could have led to disaster. She wanted people to understand that courage was about focus, control, and trust. Emergency crews began dismantling parts of the Falcon 92 for safety, documenting the damage for investigation. Engineers would later study the jet, marveling at how it had remained intact under Emily's careful control. Every movement she had made, every adjustment to the yoke, had been precise, even under extreme stress. The plane itself, once a symbol of fear, had become a monument to her bravery. Soon, officials arrived, speaking of awards, recognition, and the extraordinary nature of her actions. Emily's heart swelled with pride, but remained anchored in reality. She had done something incredible, yes, but she had also faced terror, smoke, fire, and doubt. She had survived, and that was what mattered most. Her uncle, finally standing with support, placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're a hero, Emily, not just for landing the plane, but for facing fear and not giving up. The world should know your story." Emily looked at him, a small, tired smile on her face. "I just wanted us to be safe," she whispered. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting golden light over the desert and the now quiet jet, Emily felt a sense of calm she hadn't known since the collapse. The world around her buzzed with excitement, recognition, and awe, but in her mind, she replayed the lessons learned. Calmness in chaos, trust in guidance, courage in fear. Helicopters hovered above, reporters shouted questions, and emergency crews finished their work. But Emily remained focused on the one truth. She had faced an impossible situation and had survived. The plane, the fire, the smoke, the panic, it had all been real. And she had triumphed. News vans rolled onto the airstrip as cameras captured the final moments of the extraordinary day. Emily stood beside her uncle, small, exhausted, but radiant with the quiet confidence of someone who had stared fear in the face and refused to yield. She had become a hero, not because she wanted glory, but because she had acted decisively, courageously, and selflessly. Social media buzzed, news outlets covered every detail, and messages of admiration poured in from around the country. Emily Carter, 11 years old, had landed a jet solo, saved her uncle, and inspired millions. She had faced fire, smoke, and fear, and emerged victorious. And as she looked at the Falcon 92, still smoking slightly, still humming from its engines, Emily knew something important. She had discovered strength she never knew she had. Fear could be faced. Chaos could be conquered. And even in the most impossible situations, courage could prevail. For Emily, the journey wasn't over. The accolades, the recognition, the stories would follow. But the memory of that cockpit, the roar of the engines, the smoke, and the fire, the memory of triumph in the face of terror, would stay with her forever. The sun had dipped low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the desert runway, but the world's attention remained fixed on one small figure, Emily Carter. She stood beside the Falcon 92, soot-streaked, exhausted, yet radiant with a quiet, remarkable confidence. The emergency crews were finishing their work, ensuring the jet was secure and that her Uncle Tom was stable, but the air was electric with awe and admiration. Reporters, photographers, and camera crews surrounded her, capturing every image, every word, every fleeting expression. Emily's heart still raced, but now not from fear. It was a steady, deep pulse of relief, pride, and disbelief. She had survived the impossible. She had landed a flaming jet at 11 years old. She had saved her uncle, and the world was watching. "Emily," Sarah Davis's voice came calmly over the radio, "you did more than just survive. You controlled chaos. You guided the jet. You are extraordinary." Emily's hands trembled as she clutched the radio. I just did what I had to do," she whispered, a modesty in her voice contrasting with the enormity of her achievement. But Sarah's voice reminded her that what she had done was beyond ordinary. She had faced fear, fire, and chaos, and emerged victorious. The news of Emily's heroic feat spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with hashtags celebrating her bravery. Hashtag Flying Hero, hashtag Emily Carter, hashtag Miracle Landing. Messages poured in from around the world, from pilots, children, parents, and strangers alike, praising her courage. Emily had become more than a story. She was a symbol of hope, determination, and the power of focus under pressure. Meanwhile, reporters approached cautiously, microphones extended. "Emily, how does it feel to have just landed a jet at 11 years old?" one asked. Emily hesitated, glancing at her uncle, who gave her a reassuring smile. It was terrifying," she admitted, her voice shaking slightly. "But I had to stay calm. I had to focus, and I just wanted us to be safe." The reporters murmured, impressed by her honesty and composure. They didn't just see an 11-year-old pilot, they saw bravery personified. Emily had acted decisively, selflessly, and with a maturity far beyond her years. She had not sought glory. She had sought survival, and in doing so, she had inspired millions. Emergency officials began approaching her, offering commendations and preliminary awards for her extraordinary courage. The Falcon 92, now stabilized and secured, sat behind her, a testament to her skill and determination. Engineers examined the aircraft, marveling at how she had managed to control it, despite the flames, smoke, and a disabled engine. Every movement she had made had been precise. Every decision had mattered. Her Uncle Tom, finally able to speak freely, embraced her gently. "Emily, you're a hero," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Not just for what you did today, but for the courage and focus you showed. I've never been prouder." Emily's lips trembled as she smiled weakly, the exhaustion and relief overwhelming her. I just wanted to make sure we were okay," she whispered. As evening fell, the media coverage intensified. News vans, cameras, and helicopters chronicled every angle of the miraculous landing. Emily answered questions carefully, always redirecting praise to the guidance she had received from Sarah Davis and the training her uncle had given her. "I couldn't have done it without them," she said softly. "They helped me every step of the way." Yet the story didn't just remain local or national. It became global. News outlets across the world broadcast Emily's feat, highlighting the remarkable courage of an 11-year-old facing a life-or-death situation. Aviation experts marveled at her calmness under pressure, the precision of her maneuvers, and the sheer audacity of her success. She had performed what many adults would deem impossible. Authorities decided to hold a formal recognition ceremony. Emily, small and slightly shy in front of a crowd of officials, pilots, and journalists, received a medal for extraordinary courage. She stood proudly as the applause filled the room, the weight of the moment pressing on her shoulders yet lifting her spirits. For a brief moment, she allowed herself to feel the full magnitude of her achievement. She had done something historic, something unprecedented. Her Uncle Tom, standing beside her, whispered, "You've shown the world what true courage looks like." Emily nodded, tears of exhaustion, relief, and pride streaming down her face. I just wanted to do my best," she said softly. In the weeks that followed, Emily's story inspired countless people. Schools invited her to speak about bravery and focus. Aviation programs highlighted her example, teaching students that courage and quick thinking could overcome even the most impossible challenges. Social media continued to celebrate her feat, and pilots young and old marveled at her composure and skill. Emily's life, once ordinary, had changed forever. She had discovered a strength she never knew she possessed, a courage that could guide her through fire, smoke, and fear. And though she was still a child, her story carried lessons for people of all ages. That fear could be faced, that panic could be overcome, and that focus, determination, and trust could turn even the most dire situations into triumph. Her Uncle Tom returned to flying eventually, but he always made sure Emily was included in every flight lesson, every discussion, every simulation. Her talent and bravery had proven that age was no barrier to courage, no limitation on skill, and no obstacle to achieving the extraordinary. Emily's story became a legend in aviation circles and beyond. Books were written, documentaries produced, and her tale shared in classrooms, inspiring future pilots and young adventurers alike. People marveled at the day an 11-year-old girl had faced flames, smoke, and fear, and had landed a jet with the precision and calm of a seasoned pilot. Through it all, Emily remained humble. She rarely sought attention, preferring to focus on learning, practicing, and understanding the craft her uncle had introduced her to. Yet she never underestimated the power of her story. She knew that courage wasn't about fame. It was about action in the moment when fear threatened to overwhelm. Years later, Emily would recall that day with a mix of awe and humility. She remembered the roar of the engines, the sting of smoke, the sight of the runway stretching beneath her, and the unwavering guidance of Sarah Davis over the radio. She remembered the trembling hands, the pounding heart, and the intense focus that had carried her through. And she remembered the moment she realized, as the Falcon 92 touched down safely, that she had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. Emily Carter, the 11-year-old girl who landed a flaming jet solo, had become more than a story of survival. She had become a symbol of courage, a beacon of inspiration, and a living example that the extraordinary can come from the most unexpected places. The world watched, learned, and celebrated her bravery. And for Emily, the lesson was simple, yet profound. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the choice to act despite it. And with that choice, Emily had changed her life, saved her uncle, and shown the world what it truly means to be a hero.